Good question. Good question.
You are not The Grudge. Quit it.
The Grudge. Sometimes
You
feel
never
like
seen
it.
The Grudge? The
Oh.
Grudge.
I used to have a 2-car Grudge.
Alrighty. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Unfolding Revelation podcast series, produced in partnership with Wayfarers Christian Church and Mid-South Christian College. My name is Nick Griffin. Today, I am joined in a completely different order than what we usually sit at the table.
Well,
If
Greg's
you're
at the
watching this
same
on
place.
YouTube, sitting at the center of the table for the first time in a while, our apocalyptic adventurer, Revelation superfan, Zach
Greg
House.
Waddell.
Zach House. Across from me, our other Revelation superfan and the podcasting professor himself, Greg Waddell.
Hey, everybody.
We're trying something different of trying to make sure we've got consistent mic placement between our
Well, that's what
microphones.
this
Because I just want
You
to
lied.
apologize for in some of the previous episodes you guys might just hear lots of in the words of Greg, it sounds like a tornado is hitting the studio every time that I breathe in. So we're trying some new things to avoid that. If there's any weird audio things like that, though, along the way, let us know. We're always trying to get better at what we're doing, trying to better our craft as well. So, just let us know. But this podcast series we're going chapter by chapter through the book of Revelation. And today we are starting on chapter 10. So I'm going to let Zach jump right into it. You want to read chapter 10
yeah,
for
ready.
us? Forgot he was reading the
No,
chapter
I was
this
just
time.
thinking about tornadoes coming through. That's the normal thing that happens on
That-
the days we choose to record.
the amount of podcast episodes we've had to cancel due to weather has been surprising.
Right.
But
All right. Chapter 10. Then I saw another powerful angel descending from heaven, wrapped in a cloud, with a rainbow above his head. His face was like the sun, and his legs were like pillars of fire. He held in his hand a little scroll that was open, and he put his right foot on the sea and his left on the land. Then he shouted with a loud voice like a lion roaring, and when he shouted, the 7 thunders sounded their voices. When the 7 thunders spoke, I was preparing to write, but just then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Seal up what the 7 thunders spoke, and do not write it down." Then the angel I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised his right hand to heaven and swore by the one who lives forever and ever, who created the heaven and the earth and what is in it, and the earth and what is in it, and the sea and what is in it. There will be no more delay, but in those days, when the 7th angel is about to blow his trumpet, the mystery of God is complete, just as he proclaimed to his servants, the prophets. Then the voice I had heard from heaven began to speak to me again. "Go and take the open scroll in the hand of the angel who is standing on the sea and on the land." So I went to the angel and asked him to give me the little scroll. He said to me, on the next page, "Take the scroll and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter, but it will be as sweet as honey in your mouth." So I took the little scroll from the angel's hand and ate it, and it did taste as sweet as honey in my mouth. But when I had eaten it, my stomach became bitter. Then they told me, "You must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings." Cue the thunder.
So there's several different images here that connect us to all kinds of other images throughout the Bible. That's something we've been saying happens a lot in Revelation. Mm-hmm. It's hyperlinking you back to other sections of the Bible. And in this first section, we've got a lot of really interesting ones that, Greg, you've pointed out. You think a lot of these are specifically meant to connect us with the idea of the power of God. Is that correct? Would that
Yeah.
be how you categorize it?
Yeah. Well, for example, the angel has all the signs of having been in the presence of God. He's powerful, and God considers it just to give rest to you who are afflicted. This comes from 2 Thessalonians, just to kind of coincide another New Testament passage with this. 2 Thessalonians 1:7 says that God considers it just to give rest to you who are afflicted, and to us as well as the revelation of the Lord Jesus from heaven and his mighty angels in flaming fire. So this is I think the main point of this passage is that God is powerful, and no matter what's happening to you right now, he was speaking specifically to the churches in Asia Minor at the time, but it also obviously, I think,
applies going forward.
Applies going forward. That God is strong, his angels are strong, and he wants his people to be strong. He wants them not to lose faith, not to lose heart.
Yeah. And so what are those signs that this angel's been in the presence of God that you see?
Well, it says, I saw another angel, strong. He says, first of all, strong angel.
Yeah. Mighty angel.
A mighty angel, strong angel. Then I saw another strong angel coming down out of heaven, clothed with a cloud. So he's clothed with a cloud, rainbow on his head, and his face was like the sun. Those are other symbols that also mean things.
And it's not the first time we've seen this in Revelation either, is it?
Those same symbols.
Yeah, the symbol. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so like the idea of being clothed in a cloud connects us to.
Well, I was mainly talking about the adjective a strong or a mighty angel.
Right.
He's a mighty angel. He's not.
Right.
A lot of pictures of angels, are like these little cherubims that are kind of floating around with little wings and little fat babies.
Right.
But that is not a biblical picture of angels.
Especially not of this.
They're
one.
powerful beings. Yeah.
But just to like really nail that down, some like being clothed, robed in a cloud.
That
brings us to that idea of the cloud that went ahead of the people of Israel.
That's true.
As they,
that's
right.
Yeah, I kind of took it back even further to the. That's the rainbow. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right. The cloud. He's enveloped in the cloud, and I think in the Old Testament, that's oftentimes the word glory, the glory of God, or the Shekinah of God, is associated with the cloud as well.
Right. So this cloud, immediately the readers who are familiar with these symbols would have been like, "Oh wow, you're coming down in a cloud. That means you've been in the Shekinah glory of God, in the cloud glory of God."
I just thought of something as you were saying that.
Yeah, what's that?
Moses coming down off of Sinai.
Well, and that's what I thought of, because here it says his face is like the sun.
Right.
And that immediately makes me think of Moses coming down off of Sinai.
Oh, yeah.
His face is like the sun.
Which coincides with what we've been saying before about the new Exodus, and how a lot of what we're finding in the book of Revelation is that it's talking about.
It's connecting to those Exodus
that the
ideas.
church is experiencing a new Exodus, the new Exodus.
And so, and you specifically, the idea of the rainbow, both you and Zach, you guys kind of keyed in on this too, because the rainbow is a sign of God's promise.
Right.
And
Back
so,
to the
I'm never
flood.
going to destroy the world in this way.
yeah, never going to destroy the world in this way. And so having the rainbow be on this angel is a reminder again of like
Not going to wipe out humanity.
Yeah.
Not like that.
Actually, he's never going to wipe out humanity.
right.
And he's never going to destroy the earth. He's going to cleanse it. That's another
That we can talk about that
When
in
we
a few
get there.
chapters. Yes, put a
Okay.
pin in that. That'll be an interesting one to talk
So I
about.
have a surprise for y'all.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Close your eyes. Hold out your hands. For real. You're gonna
On camera.
Okay, don't open your eyes. Tell me what you think.
Oh, I already
here.
opened my eyes as soon as you put
Gummy
it on.
bear.
Okay.
It's not a gummy bear.
Nope.
A rock.
Won't be very
It's a
gummy.
rock.
A brick.
I got a rock.
You know what those are?
A rock.
No.
Jasper and carnelian.
Oh wow.
That's what God looks like.
Too bad the folks that are just listening can't see this, huh?
Well, this is an excuse. You got to go on YouTube.
There you go. See?
And you got to see
This is
if you want to see
Jasper.
No,
That's
this is
Jasper.
Jasper.
Oh, that's Jasper.
Yeah.
Hi,
the one
Jasper.
you have is Carnelian. That's a good throwback to a
Yeah.
previous episode.
Carnelian. Okay.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So then,
Looks like a brick.
I know, right?
that's what I thought.
They
I thought it
make-
was
they
just
make
like a
Pe-
brick,
a piece of
break
brick,
off
you know?
of a
They
brick.
sealed stamps with that.
Okay, so they can melt it. It's meltable.
Well, they melt the wax and then they make their face out of that.
Oh,
That's
I
why
see. I
God's
see it.
face
So
looks
it's
like
really
that.
hard.
Yeah.
It feels like a
You
really
make
hard.
it into a ring and you stamp your face into it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
And then there was the life. The idea of life. His face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. My understanding, maybe there's a different meaning to it, but that this is expressions that convey life and vigor and energy. He's life. He's been with God.
Yeah.
and so he exudes life.
and I just preached a sermon at Wayfarers connecting fire and light and how those are images that are connected
Warmth.
with God.
Your
Yep.
point was warmth. Right?
Warmth specifically. So if you want to go look up Wayfarer CC on a podcast player of your choice, you can see that sermon going more into detail in that.
Which is, again, like you said, reminds us of Moses coming down off the mountain, and his
Yep.
face was glowing with the
Yep.
presence of God.
And so all of these ideas are supposed to convey that this angel is connected with God, coming down out of the presence of God and representing him. He's a messenger representing him in that way. So then there's this interesting idea of a scroll. He's got a little scroll in his hand, just cute little scroll in his hand. And this, again, no detail is without meaning. What do you think is the reason it decided to mention that it was a little scroll?
Well, I think that it.
A big scroll. Would be
I think
hard.
it's I think it's saying that the power and the strength is not in the size of the scroll, but it's in the one who wrote the words that are in it
Yeah. And what the scroll contains.
and what it contains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is, again, the assumption here is that inside of this scroll is the word of God, the judgment of God. And in their context, it can seem like it's just this little bitty movement of Christians. What could that possibly mean for the might of the Roman Empire or whatever the bigger world is? And it's like, hey, it may look like a little scroll, but it's not about the external appearances of that. It's about
It's
the
not
power
how
contained.
big
And
it is. It's how you use it.
And
I was trying to avoid going there, but yes.
and even today, the world considers the Bible to be not that important anymore. Right. It's old stuff, and sometimes Christians can kind of fall into forgetting how powerful the Word is. And I think the whole point is it's not. It's the one who wrote the words there that make it powerful.
Yeah.
And I always used to love when talking to somebody about the Lord to ask them to bring their Bible quite often. I would say, "Can you read that text for me?" And just because I think there's power in letting them come into contact with God's Word. It's not magical. I'm not saying that, but there's something there about the power of the Word.
Of who is the one that's writing those words down.
Yep.
So,
I think something else we should be connecting to this too is scrolls that come up in the Old Testament. A
Yes.
lot of them are connected also with like laments, like songs of woe, especially in prophetic literature.
Laments?
another visual joke.
Oui,
We're just giving you all kinds of reasons. You got to go on YouTube to find this out. Greg just held up an Altoids can as
As a
Zach
laments.
said, laments.
laments.
So, yeah, and
And that's something you should keep a lookout for here. Just sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but later on, after this chapter, you start seeing laments, songs of mourning for fallen kingdoms in Revelation.
Yeah.
And that's an Old Testament pattern of prophecy.
yeah, that's good. And so, there's this one detail that's mentioned in the next verse, at the end of verse 2, after it mentions the little scroll. And it's also in this huge section in verse 5, 6, and 7, which is it mentions this idea that the angel has 1 foot on the sea and 1 foot on the land. This has been something I've noticed all throughout the Bible, is that in the biblical text, the sea is often connected with chaos, with disorder. We'll see a beast in this book that comes up out of the sea. I always think that that's not coincidental, that this beast comes out of the sea. And in fact, in most prophetic literature, that's where the beasts come out of the sea. And land is, on the other hand, associated with like solid land, solid foundation, order
Rocks.
and structure. Even like what Jesus talks about, building on solid foundation. Yeah.
You can't crush that.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is that this angel is able to stand not only on the solid land, but also on top of the chaotic, tumultuous seas. And I think that this is supposed to give, again, because I think a lot of the point of this book is to give reassurance to both those first Christians going through difficult times, but also us today. Sometimes when there's chaos, when there's disorder, when the world around us seems like it's a churning, twisting sea of chaos, we can feel like no one's in control or no one's on top of this. And God's like, I can stand on top of that. It's not chaotic for me. and I think for these first readers, as they're hearing this, that's kind of this like, it's yet another sign of the power of God in this moment, is like, we can all stand when it's nice and ordered and solid dry land. But it takes a real powerful being to be able to stand on top of
Yeah, Peter.
chaos and water. Yeah. No, I think it absolutely connects to the idea
I
of
just realized that too.
Jesus walking on the waters, Peter being able to walk on the water. I could go on and on forever.
You're right.
You guys look this up, but I think that that's part of the idea of what's getting communicated here.
And
in
that's
all
a
these
big
verses.
angel
It's a big angel
Little scroll.
and a little
and
scroll.
a little scroll.
I might have laughed at the little scroll. Like,
So-
was it little to the angel or was it little to John?
And the mental image I have is just that the angel is giant, and he's holding this little bitty scroll.
Little bitty scroll, yeah. Isn't there a giant scroll also in the in Ezekiel that
I think so,
flies
yeah.
through the air or
No,
something?
you're thinking specifically Zechariah.
Zechariah.
That was
Zechariah.
a curse that was going to go out through
Yeah.
the land.
Yeah.
A
So
woman in a basket.
that helps us connect a little bit with. You guys are bringing up the fact scrolls come up regularly in several of the prophetic literature.
What-
This isn't a new thing here.
I just want to mention that what's really interesting is that the Jewish religion, the ancient Israelite religion, and then on into the Christian era, that was the only religion in the world that had a sacred text.
Yep.
The pagan religions, they had a few minor texts here and there, but nothing like a sacred
Yep.
text like we have.
Yep.
And like the Jews had.
Yep. And that's yeah, because every new like cult that starts these days, if it's like a new religion or a new cult, they have their sacred text, because
Yeah.
it's like you can't be a religion without your sacred book. But really, before the Jews, really, and going on into the Christians, that wasn't a thing.
There was no religion like that.
So the importance of the written word, the scriptures, is a big thing that runs all the way through. And so there's this interesting moment where,
He says, don't write it down.
yeah, he hears these sounds and he tells him not to write it
I wonder
down.
why.
And that one, I'm just gonna have to say, I don't know about that exactly. What is that?
You weren't supposed to know.
Yeah,
That's the point.
so
I think the best idea I've ever heard that fits this and prophetic literature in general is the idea of progressive revelation. So, like, he told Balaam to prophesy there's going to be this Antichrist coming after your people, and that's it. And then you get to the prophets, and they're like getting more specific. And then John is like connecting all the pieces together, and we're like, all right.
you're getting more details
Yeah,
on
you
things
get
that weren't
more
brought up
as
before.
time goes on.
I thought of it when I read that. I thought of it like God is just saying, hey, I reserve the right to save some things
Yeah.
for later.
Yeah, you don't have
Or
to
I
know
res-
everything now.
Right.
Right.
I reserve the right to keep some surprises.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so then that's followed up with Zach, you specifically wanted to talk about this section where you have to swear something.
Oh yeah.
What verse is that?
It's in verse 6. It says, "And he swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created the heavens and all that is in them." So this angel that we've been describing swears by him who lives forever and ever. That's a connection to there's other
yeah.
passages where that same phrase comes up,
I
right?
think first century Jews and Christians would specifically be thinking of Daniel for sure. Because that same Jesus figure is there, does the same exact thing, lifts his hands towards heaven and says, swears by the one who lives forever and ever. And that's like, come on, that's way too coincidence. He's standing, well, there he's hovering over the Euphrates River and the bank. So it's the same land and sea, same
Yeah.
descriptions and everything.
Yeah.
And so I think they would specifically be thinking that. But something I think is really cool is way before then, there's some Psalms too, but what comes to my mind is Deuteronomy 32, which you should definitely read. It's about towards the end, but this is God talking about moving on, right? And starting in verse 40, it says, this is God talking, "For I raise up my hand to heaven, and I say, as surely as I live forever, I will sharpen my lightning-like sword, and my hand will grasp hold of the weapon in judgment." So there, specifically, God says, I raise my hands. And there's another part somewhere I didn't find where he says, don't swear by me, or don't make
Oh, Jesus talks in the Sermon on the
Yeah.
Mount about
Right.
not swearing by.
frivolously
Yeah.
and not keeping it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how do these texts that you just referred to, how do they inform your understanding of this passage?
Well, it sounds like you see that there's an idea over and over again of swearing by the one who lives forever and ever, which we know is a reference to God Himself, and there's this figure that keeps coming up in lots of places that swears by Him who comes forever and ever, and Jesus warns us, don't swear by heaven because you have no control over that. So there's this interesting verse in Deuteronomy where God Himself, in a way, is like swearing by Himself.
And
And
that's
so-
as sure can be.
So the idea being, we can't swear by anything because we don't control those sorts of things. God is the only one who is like fully solid, fully sure, fully can guarantee whatever He is saying.
Kind
And
of goes
so,
along
yeah.
with the idea of the rainbow, what we said
Yes.
there
Yeah.
about the
Yes.
fact that you can trust me.
You can trust
I
me.
can do this.
can-
I'm able to do this.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that's the point that's being
Yeah.
communicated here. Absolutely. And so then this leads us toward this interesting thing at the end where there is the little scroll that we've been talking about, and then the voice says to go and take that scroll. So he goes and he takes that scroll, and it says, "Take it and eat it." Eat the paper, eat the scroll. You guys ever eat
Doesn't
paper?
doesn't it sound like a dream that, some
Yeah.
dreams that we've had at times,
Yeah. Yeah.
things don't have to make logical sense, but they have a symbolic meaning.
Absolutely. And this is a thing that's come up before. We've talked about because we're like, what's the deal with eating a scroll?
Right.
Well, that actually comes up at other points in the Bible, correct?
Yes.
My Bible has a reference here to Ezekiel
I knew you were
3,
going to go there. Ha!
which, hold on, let me pull up the exact reference.
1 through 3.
Yep. And it says, "And he said to me, Son of man, eat what is before you. Eat this scroll, then go and speak to the people of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat." And so, especially in this passage in Ezekiel, and I also think this is what's going on here in Revelation, the idea of eating this scroll is sort of the idea of accepting the responsibility of proclaiming the word of God to the people.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not this. It's this scroll. You're going to eat it. You're going to internalize it. You're going to digest it. Literally put it. Meditate on it, ruminate on it, and be able to then declare it to the people.
Because in the Ezekiel passage, isn't that at his calling to be a prophet? Yeah.
Yep.
It's like we have responsibility.
Right. Because it's followed with verse 4, Son of man, go now to the people of Israel and speak my words to them after he eats it.
Right.
So John's getting this vision. He's seeing all of this. He sees this angel. He sees this little scroll. And then he has to go and eat the scroll. He has to go accept the calling to proclaim this. But there's an interesting detail about this scroll, which is that it tastes sweet as honey, is what it says. But then it turns sour in your stomach. Gives
It's
you
like
a
Asian food.
stomach ache.
Sweet and sour.
Sweet and sour. So what do we think that means? Why?
I told you.
What is that supposed to mean? It's like Asian food.
I think it means that it's obviously the sweetness is what happens in a person's soul and spirit when they accept God's will for their lives. They accept this, and they're one with God.
And it really is sweet to be able to.
It's sweet to be able to be in that place.
Yeah.
But it also brings with it suffering, just like it did in the life of the Apostle Paul, or practically all the prophets.
Yeah.
Any of the prophets, who faithfully proclaimed God's word, they got resistance for that and often suffered and even died. Were murdered
Well,
because of it.
Yeah, they didn't die. They were murdered.
Yeah.
Murdered, right,
Right.
right.
Right. And so.
So it carries with that bitterness aspect to the sweetness, and it's not like the sweetness ends and the bitterness starts. Their whole ministry is a combination of sweetness and bitterness.
Even after that little passage that you read, if you keep going, it says, "For you are not being sent to a people of unintelligible speech and difficult language, but the house of Israel. Not to many peoples of unintelligible speech and difficult language, whose words you cannot understand." You're going to your own people.
Yeah. Yeah. And oftentimes it can be really tough. You go to your own people and they don't even listen to you.
They're like, "Oh, that guy that I grew up with, he thinks he's some special person now."
What was it? Jesus has a saying about that.
A
right?
prophet has no honor in his hometown.
In his own, yeah.
Yep. I think we've all experienced that a little bit, especially growing up in churches. So then it leads us to the very last verse here, which is that you must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings. And so, Zach, you kind of went on a little mini Bible word study here. What was the word that really interested you in this last verse?
Well, growing up, I was just like eating up stuff. And it wasn't until recently that I read that and was like, it's prophesy again. So he's prophesied before, but it's not too many peoples, nations, languages. It's about those. And that's how most of the translators translate it.
Yeah.
But and never mind that it took me like 2 hours just to find this one word because I'm hard-headed. But the word is epi.
In the Greek word that gets translated about there.
Yeah.
Epi.
Who would have thought it was the smallest word in the verse? But it's translated.
Epsilon pi iota.
That's what I always called it, Yoda.
Yeah.
Iota. Iota.
That was my memory trigger for it. It was call it Yoda because it's got a little thing that uses the force.
So, what does the word epi mean? How does it usually get translated?
It's got different forms depending on how you use it. I don't understand all of it. Like, I couldn't just use it or whatever, but it's, you could say prophesy again on, or upon, or at the time of, or at, or against. Against was an unexpected one for me. Against many nations, language, people groups, and kings.
Yep.
Or on the basis of.
Yep.
Like concerning. So I see why they picked the word about, because it's kind of
Encompasses
general.
all of them.
Yeah, but that just stuck
It's
out.
kind of
to
one
me
of
this
those
time.
words where you have to depend on the context to
Yeah.
figure out.
Right.
I wish I was deeper into
This Louw-Nida says concerning with respect to, about, in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the idea here is that this prophecy that there is going to get prophesied again is about a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is starting to get into
specific people, I would say. Because that's it.
Well, it says here many peoples,
Yeah.
nations, languages, and kings. So,
So I think after this, you start getting, you get the image of the beast with the 10 horns and
Yeah.
the so many crowns or whatever. I think that's what he's telling him to prophesy again about.
yeah. And so you get this idea of, and this is something that's come up, we've said several times throughout, but there's all these kings, these nations, these pseudo powerhouses around the world that try to set themselves up against the power of God. And we're about to find out. What does God say about these people?
You know, there is another way you could understand this.
Yeah.
Verse 2. You must. Let me see if I can get this right. You must again prophesy about many peoples. In other words, you've already prophesied about these peoples,
Yeah.
and now you're going to do it again,
Yeah.
which would
Yes.
kind of coincide with my idea that they're cyclical.
There's some cyclical stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to find out what is
What
said about
this
these
is.
many
All
peoples,
right.
nations, and
This was a
kings
really short
coming up here
chapter,
soon.
wasn't it?
It
Yeah.
was. But I think there's some good
Bite
stuff in
size.
it.
It was bite size. It was small, but it's going to be bitter in the
like-
stomach.
I just thought of
Hopefully
this
not.
one. This one's like some really good. Somebody comes in the library and is like, "You would not believe what just happened," and then you go like, the juicy gossip. I don't have a lot of time, but I gotta go. But here's the thing: you need to know about this because
Yeah.
Alicia, she's gone off the rails.
Let me tell you about this angel and this little
Yeah,
scroll.
This giant
So,
angel.
This giant angel, this little scroll.
the
Yeah.
juicy gossip.
So, but as with all of these, there's some really cool connections going all throughout the Bible here. So, like I said, we're about to find out more in the next one. So, join us next time. Jesus Christ is the way to go. Call 683 and the little scroll. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out this podcast episode. If you want to help us produce it and the other podcasts like it that we do at Wayfarers, I'd encourage you to visit us at wayfarerscc.com/give. I also want to give a shout out to Mid-South Christian College. Myself and our podcasting professor, Greg Waddell, are professors at the school. And if you want to learn more about the Bible, prepare yourself for ministry, Mid-South is one of the best places to do it. Check it out at midsouthchristian.edu. Thanks.